Hello, Marcel, and welcome to Oral Gives Live. And with me, I have a very interesting guest. Been here many times before. It's none other than Mr. Marcel Gumbs. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing fine, thank you. Thanks for the invitation, and greetings to your viewers, your listeners, and to everybody listening.
Well, thank you. You go back a long way. You have a lot of experience. I always mention this. You was the former Prime Minister of St. Maarten. In the former Netherlands Antilles, you held many positions in Parliament as a senator,
yes.
Junior secretary, right?
Yeah, it's been an interesting road on serving because, I come from a family that we like to serve. Having served as Member of Parliament and also as State Secretary of Justice, General Affairs in the Netherlands Antilles, and lastly as Prime Minister for 11 months of St. Maarten.
You're also a member of the steering committee, very important committee.
I was a member of the steering committee of the St. Maarten Trust Fund. That's a trust fund that was and it still is responsible for allocating the funds from the Netherlands for the hurricane, the grant, which is free money that we got. But I resigned as of the 1st of June last year, and my replacement now is Mr. Ronald Hallman. He has taken up that position from the 1st of June 2023.
I must say, and your daughter has taken up the family tradition of serving.
Yes. My daughter is decided to follow, and together with some young people, they formed a political party, PFP, and from what I hear, people tell me they're doing very well.
And they've just been re-elected again.
They've just been re-elected, and I think they've brought a new dimension to the political scenario. I think they have a long way ahead to go, and for people to really understand them. But they're getting there, and I wish them luck and all the blessings.
So your daughter is in her second term now in Parliament.
Yes, my daughter is in her second term as a Member of Parliament, and she's very excited and very dedicated. And that's the person she is. I tell people she's no easy cookie, and she's on top of things, and she's very dedicated.
Yeah, but I like it because anytime I contact her, she responds immediately and say, "I'm coming" or "I'm not coming."
Yes.
And I like that.
Yes. No, she's that, and then if she tells you she's coming by you at 8:30, believe me, at 8:15 she's there.
Can't say that about a lot of others, but
can't say that about a lot of Caribbean people. We got the Caribbean time in us.
When you look at the Parliament of St. Maarten today, do you see a big difference between the former Netherlands Antilles where you served in Parliament?
Yes, there is a big difference. And when I talk to my former colleagues, which I have lots of contact from the Netherlands Antilles, they come in the same. It's not only new in St. Maarten, but it's also in Curaçao. I think it's a generational thing where the style and the way of doing politics has changed, and it's dynamic, no? It's changing all the time. Look, we all were young one time. I was young too, and I still feel young. But what I mean with that is that you always figure you can
change the world
and confront it. And you can change the world, but sometimes you have to take your time and you have to do it strategically, and use your brains instead of just your emotions, and behave differently. But it takes everybody a while when you get elected in Parliament to, I would say, learn the ropes and to find out who it is. I'll never forget, I always tell this to younger people, take your time, read and get to find out where everything is. Once, I had 6 months in Parliament, and I thought I had, reached the final line, and I thought I was, well prepared and everything. And someone, a more experienced Member of Parliament told me, he said, "Take it easy, man. He said, you only got 6 months in here. You have not even found the way to the bathroom to go relieve yourself. And I was like, he said, yes, around here everything takes time. And another thing too, it takes a while for people to understand. And I share this with a lot of people. When you get elected to parliament, whether you are a lawyer, whether you're a doctor, whatever you are, you're the equal with the same guy sitting next to you, even though he might have just a high school diploma, because the vote is equal. One vote is not more important. And I've seen members of parliament in my days come in and they keep saying, as a lawyer, I suggest this as a lawyer, until his handbrakes was pulled up and said, wait a minute, as a lawyer, you're equal in here. So don't come in showing some placard who you are and all that. learn the responsibility and the procedures and so, that will help a whole lot. I try to tell young people too, the first document you got to know when you're going to parliament is, read the rules of order. Because if you know the rules of order, then nobody can fool you in parliament. And secondly, what I try to instill as much as possible, not only in elected officials here on the island, but also those who are working in the system, civil servants, or even the society. Take time and read the laws of the country. And but they're not the English. Yes, they are in English. The Infomedia Foundation did publish the 5 books that at the moment there's none in stock. I understand they're planning on reprinting more. And those are handy little books for you to have at your dining room table or your living room table and to pick up and read. Yeah. Because if you don't read the laws, what happens, everything gets blurred in the media. So, and if you don't have the books, go on the internet, go on smartgov.org/laws/English, and all of them would pop up there. And it's good reading material for everybody to visit that law and to read about them, because that's how we get to understand. And if you know the law, because it is said every citizen is expected to know the laws of the country. Mm-hmm. So if you know the laws of the country, then you will know how your democracy works and what are your rights, what government can do and what government can't do. And that's so important to be able to read the laws of the country. And if you don't, then you will find governments and ministers or members of parliament who will continuously keep selling you a 6 for a 9. Mm. And that's not good for the development of a society.
When you look at Simran today and you look back over the years that you've been in politics and being a member in the parliament of the former Nelson Cities, and now seeing Martin today, where there's a different system in terms of, back in the olden days, you had the party leadership who decided what number you got, and based on your number, you got into government. Today's every man and woman for themselves. You think that's a better way?
Well, we're going to end up talking about what is called, popularly known as the lynch law. Mm. But let me just bring an example. Before the lynch law, and what is before the lynch law? Yes, there was a structure where the list was made. So you had what they call in Dutch a lijststelsel, a list format, where if the party gets 5 seats, the top 5 persons would get elected and they would go, right, whether it was in the island council, in this case it would be in the parliament. But a lot of people forget, there was that possibility also for if a candidate is at, let's say, number 9, okay, he would need to get substantially more votes than number 2 for him to get elected. And it has happened. Former Island Council member Dennis Pantoflet, for instance,
the Wonder Boy,
ran at I think it was number 9 once on the DP list, and He and his team, his campaign team, carried a very rigorous election, and he got what they call not the quotient of the part of the electoral, so the amount of seats that get, but he gets what they call he received the quotient of the list +1. So he went from 9, he went up to he got elected because of the amount of votes he received. Now the Lynch law made that easier. The Lynch law, the voting ordinance was changed where if you're number 7, 8, 9, 10, even 15, and you get one more vote than number 2, then you go in, so you jump from number 12 on the list, you go in, and number 2 will be out. So it was said, and it is said, that that's more democratic because the person got one more vote, so more people like him or prefer him than they prefer number 2. You understand? What that has caused, yes, it has weakened, in my opinion, and in many others' opinion, it has weakened, let us say, the grip that the leadership of the party had on the slate, on the list. What you get as a result of that is the bullies and the financiers and so, they would put their money and campaign heavy for the guy at number 10, hoping that he would get one more vote than the guy at number 2. And you see that clearly in the results of election. If you take time and analyze the whole developments, that's what's happening. So the leadership becomes weakened. The leadership is weakened by this procedure.
But you mentioned Dennis Pontiflet.
Yes.
He went on to be a commissioner.
Yes.
And then he was PDP.
Yes, that's when you had the exodus from the DP party, when people broke away from the DP and went to PDP. Yes.
It is amazing because I noticed in some modern history, once you do that, you're gone, politically.
Well, yes, you can survive it, but history shows, this tradition is that when you break away from established party, that's what happens to you eventually.
So when you look at the Lynch law, you think it's good or bad for St. Martin? Martin, I say.
I'll be honest with you, and I'll be honest with you. When that law came to the Island Council, I was a member of the Island Council, and I voted for it, even though it came from another party. Because if you look at it, yes, it was a bit more democracy. What we didn't do, or what I didn't foresee, and nobody ever looked at it, that the possible consequences it will have. Because don't forget, we are the only island in the former Netherlands Antilles, and now in the kingdom, that introduced that law. Curacao doesn't have it. Aruba doesn't have it. Bonaire doesn't have it. Sable and Statia doesn't have it. On the other islands, yes, you can be at the bottom of the list, but you have to get substantial more votes to be able to get elected. And that's what has happened on the other islands.
So I think, from my opinion, I think it's good democratically. But what you're seeing in St. Martin today is that people have become politicians have become so arrogant now. And it was my seat, my votes, because I got the people with the finances to back me, and I get it. And there's some danger there, I think.
Well, the danger is very much there, because what you have, and I've said it before, and I'll say this again, and if I need to say it in court, I'll say it. We have developed on St. Martin a system. We haven't developed a system. The development has led to where bullies, outside, they prey on a candidate, whether it's a new candidate or whether it's a weak candidate. They prey on them to get them, whether it's with money, with a bag of money, or with financing and paying the campaign, to get them elected against, let us say, others who is on a higher position, who has worked harder. Yeah. There's a particular party where one guy, the leader that worked very hard, since the time the term was that he came with more initiative ever than in the history of of the parliament, but he didn't get re-elected. So
I know you were speaking about.
Yeah. So and other people in his party got re-elected.
Yeah.
So I've been posing the question to friends who wants to listen. What happened there is that if you work hard and come with initiative that the voters say we don't want you, we reject you. Is that what the voters are saying? I don't know. I think it needs to be looked at.
But what do you think about this past election that took place on January 11th? Because the thing is that you had so many people competing for the 5 seats. You had individuals pushing for candidates in other political parties. The results were surprising.
Yeah, the voters basically, in my opinion, said, look, I ain't giving nobody no big chunk. and those who had big chunks, I'm going to take it away from them. And they kind of spread it across the spectrum, where you end up with 4 parties getting 2 seats, et cetera, et cetera. But that is how voters, the voting public reacts sometimes. Sometimes they send messages that we need to take a while, stop for a moment and read and analyze those messages. But still too much. There is still too much of, I call it bullying from outside influences that do their best to grab a candidate. And once that candidate is elected, then they keep reminding that candidate how he got there. And if you're not strong, and I always say we have to get people involved in politics that has a strong personality, that cannot be moved,
right,
that will not break. Sometimes if somebody is let me put it this way nicely, if somebody is not accustomed of glamour, going in nice places or nice restaurant, and all of a sudden they get a taste of it, they say, wow, this is good living, and how do I maintain this?
Yeah.
But you have to know you can reach there and maintain it by working hard and do what you're supposed to do. The crux of the matter is that if you entered into politics, you've gone into it to serve your country, serve the people that you represent. If you go in there to just remember, oh gosh, that guy sponsored my campaign, that guy gave me this, that guy gave me that, and I have to listen to him, then you're lost.
In case you've just joined us, I'm Oral Gibbs here on Oral Gibbs Live. My guest is former Prime Minister of St. Martin, and he's a very distinguished politician from the former Nelson Antilles. Mr. Marcel Gumbs is my guest there on our Oral Gibbs Live. And Mr. Gumbs, when you look at what happened on January 11th, a lot of people were surprised that the one-man party got so many votes.
Oh, Mr. Nigel, yes, yeah. Yes, that's true.
Were you surprised?
Well, I didn't know the gentleman. I've spoken to him since then, and I must say that I got a different impression because he when you talk to him,
right,
and you hold a conversation, he knows a lot, and the results of the votes. You can look at it several ways. You can look at it that what he's preaching, there's a following for it, okay? And on the other side, you can also look at it and say, well, a punishment to the other parties, the established parties, and they say, well, protest votes, a punishment. Yes, we're going to vote for him, okay? He will have to make sure that he continue and grow and understand what he's, the arena and the procedures and so, to grow those amount of votes and whether he's going to get other candidates on his list. But yes, it's you can look at it 2 ways. People believe in what he's preaching, he was preaching, and or they went out as a protest vote against it. But Yeah, it was amazing feat. I think he calls himself the 16th member of parliament, and he goes to every meetings.
Yeah.
You know, and people ask him a lot of questions.
He's a pretty intelligent guy.
Yeah, he got he knows a lot. He got it done. Yeah.
And I had him in the program when he came the first time. I said to him, "Look, I don't have an agenda. You don't have to be worried about coming, doing an interview. I'm going to be very fair with you and everything else." And we had a good interview with him on the radio and also on television. Yeah. There's another guy that got elected to Maingret. He ran, I think, 2 times before that and did not get elected. And now he got elected, but his campaign people are really giving him...
I've seen Mr. Maingret from a distance and hello. Not that we sit down and had a conversation, so I really can't talk much about it. But that whole scenario is, those are things you got to be careful when you're going in public office. Who is around you, who you commit to, and who you talk to and you prepare for.
I never heard of before. I don't know this happened before, but maybe you can tell me. In the past, did people who ran for office sign any agreement letters or so with anyone?
I've never heard of it.
Oh, okay.
I've never heard. I know there's been parties that try to get their candidates to sign some sort of paper. I've never seen it. I've heard about it. Not that a candidate individually signs with an outsider.
Oh, okay.
But that a party had tried to get people to sign. But that doesn't stand in court.
Really?
No, it can't stand in court.
Okay.
No, it doesn't stand in court unless in the party. Some parties in other countries, there's in their articles and in their corporation, and so in the preparation phase, you have to sign some non-disclosure agreement and stuff and things like that. But not that when you get elected, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. No, I've never heard of it. I've never heard of it. And according to me, it can't stand in court because there's a thing people have to understand. Once you get elected, and that oath that you take an oath, and that oath overrules everything. As far as I understand, and as far as I know in the part, if you have a disagreement with your party, you have to be able to sit down and trash it out and clear it out, because nobody thinks alike. But you cannot be in disagreement with your party, and because of that, you're going to, just how you say, decide you're going to jump ship or throw down government.
But they can vote their conscience.
You have to vote your conscience. And if you can't vote your conscience, then you have to stay away from the vote. If you can't vote your conscience, stay away from the vote. I'll tell you something. You know that there's history shows that, for instance, in Belgium, there was a law passed. I can't remember what it is. I'll have to look it up. It was a law passed, and when it reached by the king, the king has to come to sign it.
Right.
But it was against his principles. So he resigned for 2 days. His son became king. He signed it, and then his son resigned for him to come back. If your conscience bothers you, you have to find a way. Either stay away from it or find a formula to keep your conscience clear. But too often, we don't have any conscience at all. Our conscience box is broken, like the old people would say.
When you look at St. Maarten today, how you feel? How you feel about this island?
I care very much for this island. A lot of things, I'll tell you something, and one of these days we probably have to, you'll have to read the memoirs on it. But this island has been good to me from a young age, okay? And this island has done 2 things for me, and I'm very, very grateful, and I would forever be grateful and try to pay back or make a contribution to the development of this island as much as possible. What has happened is that in my opinion, is that we have not really controlled what the things we have to control, okay? And what I mean with that is, for instance, the economy. We never took time to manage the economy properly. We just let it run away. It was hot, it was good, everybody was making money, and we said, well, that's a good thing, you know.
Right.
It was a good thing, yes, for a certain while, for many, but at a certain moment, it became too much. So what has happened is, for instance, we have had to import labor, extremely high numbers of labor, to keep this economy burning.
Yeah, the Dutch side.
Well, the Dutch side and the French side
Both
too.
sides.
Well, the French side, obviously the French side, that's another story. But the French side, at a certain moment, we became competitive with each other instead of being complementary to each other. Again, let me talk about that. In the 70s, when Mullet Bay came, the Dutch side didn't have enough people to work. That is when the government at that time, decided that they would waive what was called the workbook or the work permit for people from the French side, people that were born on the French side. That's when the influx of people from the French side came over to work at Mullet Bay. Don't forget, Mullet Bay at its peak had 650 people working for it. And a lot of them came from the French side. And what happened, the French side, the Mullet Bay had the buses, Alred Peters, the union buses. You remember those from Cold Bay? Where Ace is now?
He was a big union man.
He was a big union man. But the union buses used to go around the island, taking workers and picking up workers all hours of the night and in the day. Okay? And then what happened, in my opinion, defiscalization came. Defiscalization is when
the 80s, right?
Yes, was when the French government decided to stimulate the economies of their overseas territory. They introduced a tax benefit for French investors. So defis. So that means that if a developer came with a project in the overseas territories, the here, Guadeloupe, and about the French side, and they could sell the project, and it will be built. So the investor will get a tax break immediately in France. So that's when the French side started building hotels, okay? And what happened with that is that the groups who used to stay at Mullet Bay and Maho and other hotels during the summer, okay, the cheaper, let's say the cheaper season, okay, they discovered the French side. And because the French side could sell those rooms over there way cheaper than Mullet Bay. So you had a shift of the economy that went over to the French side a bit. Nothing wrong with that, but there was no coordination between both sides. Everybody started competing with each other, the two sides. As a result of that, what we got? We got more hotels being built on the Dutch side. We have more people coming in. No homes being built for these people because the government ain't got the property to build homes. And what we got? We got what we got now. We got traffic jams. Up to now, there's nobody in the last, when I tried to bring it up in 2015, and it was shut down when I was Prime Minister. Let us have a conversation with the two sides about putting a cap on the importation of cars on this island.
That's a no-no.
Nobody wants to listen to that.
Yeah.
I tell you what, one guy I remember back in the 80s mentioned it in a radio program, Michael Ferrier. Okay? He says we have to start thinking about that and talking about it. Otherwise, where are we going? Right now, I keep saying it, just take your time. Don't drive around because then you wouldn't see it. Ask somebody to drive you around and pay attention on this island. You will see the amount of wrecks and cars, new cars parked up all over because it's just too much. And the more cars we got, the more traffic jams we got, the more tourists are going to say, I can't take this, and they're going to go to other places. We complain that, the politicians are here one of them, Anguilla getting direct flights. Yeah, Anguilla getting direct flights because there's too much here. Yes, flights going to St. Kitts. People want to go to a Caribbean island that is pristine, that got some greenery and so. And what we're doing is just chopping down everything green and building concrete. People don't want that.
Notice a lot of people now going to Guadeloupe and Martinique.
Of course, because people want to change. And I'll never forget, I've been 3 places in the United States. Once in Chicago, once in New York, and once in Florida, in Miami. And happened to be talking to people, and all 3 tells you the same thing. Your problem on St. Martin is the traffic. The traffic. Yeah. I mean, it's ludicrous that we take a flight 2 hours from Curacao to St. Martin on your local airline Winair, and it takes you an hour and 50 minutes from the airport to Phillipsburg. Yeah. But we don't talk about that. So we have to find a solution for that. And the solution is not necessarily more roads. The solution is, I think, we have to get over to start looking seriously at having a joint bus company owned by both sides that is transporting people in buses on a schedule basis.
Wow. You think that will work in St. Martin?
Well, everybody tells me I'm crazy, it wouldn't work. But if it worked in places like Bermuda, for the last 45 years, Bermuda has a bus system in it. And Bermuda is smaller than us. Every island got a bus system. But, when you talk, everybody sees a problem in it. But somewhere we got to do it. And you know what, Aral? We are so blessed. I am a firm believer that we, even though we're half Dutch and half French, a good project, well prepared for a joint bus system run around this entire island, owned by a bus company that is owned by the collectivité and the Dutch side government, will get financing easily from the European Union. Because all you have to include in it is the benefit for the environment, the benefit for the air, the benefit for people, and you will get the financing for it.
Making us a more green island.
Well, yeah, I mean green, yeah, but we're making it a more gray island. That's what we're doing.
But if we follow your suggestion.
Well, we follow, but yeah, and then it will work. And the benefits of it. Imagine you are on a bus. Imagine you want to go Marigot from Phillipsburg. You get on a bus, there's Wi-Fi, you're on your phone, you do what you got to do. You get off in St. James, you go do what you got to do, you come back, and you don't have to look for no parking. You don't waste no gasoline. Anyway.
I'll tell you one thing though, we don't like to walk. We want to park the car right inside the business.
Yes. That's another part. But we have some challenges, and I hope whichever government we get now in the new term, I hope that they would really pay some attention to that and just stop this rat race that we are going. We want more this, we want more crews, we want more tours. But where are we going to put them, Pata?
Yeah. You said something earlier that Dutch had waived the working regulations for people in France. So I didn't know that. Yes.
You have to be born. If your passport showed that you're born on the French side, the waiver was, and the problem, I shouldn't say the problem, the decision was taken by the Executive Council. Okay, it was never really put. The law itself. The labor law itself was never changed. But it worked. It worked until back in the 80s, because what happened in the 80s? The 80s, the French side started having more exit to Guadeloupe. So mothers who were expecting their babies for whatever reason, so was very often flown out to Guadeloupe. The child was born in Guadeloupe, on his passport said born in Guadeloupe, but the parents are from St. Martin. And then when they come back, the child goes to school on the French side and gets a job to work on the Dutch side because of the French knowledge. You get that a lot at the airport, because of their French knowledge, they get a job easy and so. But then that did not comply for them because the passport said they were born on Guadeloupe and not on St. Martin.
The Guadeloupe play a very important role still in this island.
No, so what happened, the resolution from the Executive Council at that time said you had to be born on the French side, not in Guadeloupe. So that was a technicality. But Guadeloupe, yes, played a very important role where...
I'll tell you what I mean when you're finished.
Yeah, with the French side. But, and then that was changed. But in the meantime now, what we're doing, the French side, because it being part of Europe, they having a lot of, let us say, citizens from Europe coming, and they can't stop them because they're part of Europe.
Yeah.
You know, on the French side, if you're taking part, if you're getting the benefits, you got to take the other part too. You want the sweet part, you know, you got to take the sour also with it.
Right. Yeah.
We on the Dutch side still have a restriction for work permits and residence permits and so for workers. But what has happened is that the businesses have shifted away from local ownership also to in the hands of I don't want to call them outsiders. I call them non-Martiners who have been residing on the island for umpteen years.
You're being quite diplomatic. The reason why I said earlier is because my father was born on the French side.
Yeah.
And his mother's from the French side, and his father's from the Dutch side. My father could vote on both sides, French and Dutch, but he worked on the Dutch side for the Dutch government. And when I wanted a birth paper from my grandmother, I could get it. She was born in the 1800s. When I wanted the birth paper for my great-grandmother, I had to go to Guadeloupe.
That's where the register was.
Yeah, because there's nothing up to today. There's so much information that is in Guadeloupe for St. Maarten. I think it's about time that it do something about that.
I think they've been working on that. I don't know how far it is. I know they've been working on retrieving that information. But you have to understand, in those days, all the administration was in Guadeloupe. Yeah. You know, and the difference, you know, my father was born on the French side too. My mother was born in Santo Domingo, because my grandfather on my mother's side, he was an accountant. Okay. He studied in Guadeloupe, but he was hired by the sugar factory in Santo Domingo to go down there. And while down there, my mother was born, but she came here when she was 8 or 9 weeks.
When last you been to Santo Domingo?
I haven't been there in years. I mean, the local committee on the celebration of Dominican Week, they when they found out that my mother was born there, they kind of like acknowledged me as a Dominican. No, lovely people. But you know, we got to know our history a bit to know what's what. But coming back to the Dutch-French side, let me give you an example. The French side, all those documents that you requested for your father, your grandfather, I'm sure you didn't pay 1 cent for it.
Not a cent.
No, because that's the French Republic. The French citizen should not be burdened with getting a document with information about his family.
Can't say the same on this side.
No, it's $10 every time. Anytime you go by the census office, it's cost. I mean, the lovely people that work there, they're great and everything, but the law is you got to pay. There's no free lunch.
You got to pay. I like how you put it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, there was a time when we were together. I'll give you a quick reason. The late Dr. Clawati, Dr. Petty, then Mayor Albert Fleming too, and the governor of St. Thomas, along with Anguilla, Prime Minister, we used to come together. There was a big meeting in Anguilla back in 1988, I think, where you had Dr. Wadi, Albert Fleming, the Gumbs from Anguilla, even the governor from St. Thomas was there. We're together. What happened now? It seems like we're so apart.
We have drifted away, and I think it has to do with the changing of the guard politically. If you don't have that link, Anguilla, French St. Maarten, Dutch St. Maarten, St. Thomas, there was a reason for that. And the reason for that is because there was so many Anguillians that moved to the Virgin Islands for economic reasons. And you also have from the Dutch and the French side. Don't forget that in the 60s, okay, before Mullet Bay came to St. Martin, the trend was that people from St. Martin went to St. Thomas. St. Thomas and the U.S. Virgin Islands always played a very, very important role in the region where economic activities is concerned. For instance, an island like St. Bart's, a lot of people don't know and don't pay attention. There are a lot of people from St. Bart's, when St. Bart's was not what it is today, okay, move from St. Bart's to St. Thomas. That is why if you go in St. Thomas, there's an area that they call Frenchman Town. They call it Cha-Cha-Town, okay? Pure people descendants from St. Bart's there. But the same thing, we have people on the French side of St. Martin that went to St. Thomas, especially the men them in the construction, to work down there, and came back and from that build their homes. So we've always been a migrating family. Yeah. And if you have people who know that, of course, former Premier of Anguilla, Gumbs, then you have Osborne Fleming and all them. There was a link, and that is where they brought the authorities, the leaders together on whichever island to have a celebration. But there's nothing wrong with that. We can still do that, you know.
Why we don't do it?
We don't do it because as generation change, everybody gets so occupied with their own little shop, their own little operation. They tend to forget. And if you don't tell the stories of the past, some of them just wouldn't know because they're not interested.
Yeah. In case you just joined us, it's Oral Gibbs Live. My name is Oral Gibbs. My guest is Mr. Marcel Gumbs, the former Prime Minister of St. Martin. He's here with us on Hot 99.9 FM radio, Facebook, and YouTube. When we come back, we'll continue with Mr. Gumbs right here on Oral Gibbs Live. Please do this.
We are vibrant, expressive, warm, and diverse. Together, we conquer, and now we expand into new horizons, giving you more of the best. Introducing our new Banco Matico Plus with wider acceptance, purchase protection, and enhanced security. Whether you're online, traveling, or in paradise, experience more with Windward Island Bank. Banco Matico Plus. More of the best.
My guest here on the Oral Gibbs Live is Mr. Marcel Gumbs, and you either listen to us on Hot 99.9 FM radio or you're watching us on YouTube and Facebook. With all the things said about St. Martin, I think this is a great island, a lot of potential. I see our people at a point in their life where we should have done more or be doing less, and that's in my view. I could be wrong. We look at the island, there's so much prosperity, a lot of construction. The past winter season, we saw a lot of mega yachts and people coming to the island, but they're not staying in St. Martin. They just take the yacht and they go off for a tour, go to St. Bart's, you know. When you look at all the things, what surprised you the most about St. Martin that you said, wow, I didn't have thought about that?
Well, I think it's coming back to what I said just now. We have to pause for a moment, in my opinion, and figure out where we want to go.
But when you say pause, in what context?
Pause the contents of let us get together, let's have a conference, and let's designate how we're going to move forward as a whole. We cannot continue leaving Dick, Harry, Peter, and Paul, build a building here, build a building there. Look at GB. GB has its issues, I'm sure from in the last 2 years or so, 3 years, the organizational, the whole confusion with boards and management and all that. But in the meantime, GB hasn't bought new generating power. But we have buildings popping up all over. Those buildings have to be supplied with electricity. And at a certain moment, where the electricity going to come from? Okay. Secondly, yesterday I saw on a news article the the Spanish islands there off Spain, the coast of Spain, they are protesting
Mass tourism.
mass tourism.
Yeah.
And that's where we went kind of wrong. We went wrong, and I wasn't in the island government, but we went wrong when we permitted these overwhelming amount of timeshares to come into the place.
Well, I'm glad you said it because most people don't want to say that.
Yeah, but I'm telling you, it's a fact.
Yeah.
Look, you remember the type of, and we could have maintained that if we had just put conditions and control. I'm a firm believer. Look, there's two trends of thoughts, okay? Everything you have to manage. I'm not saying control, but you have to manage it properly. You cannot have a runaway economy because it's like a runaway freight train. It's going to hit somewhere.
But isn't that why we are so successful? Because the government had a laissez-faire attitude.
Yeah, well, you can have a laissez-faire attitude, but doesn't mean that every Dick, Harry, Peter, and Paul who come in that he wants to build a building, you tell him, yes, here it is, go. You can't. And because you know why? Because we're not Orlando. Orlando, Florida started small, and it built. Anyway, because Orlando got land, okay?
Yeah.
You can put a building code. You can grow. So Orlando, the airport in Orlando, which I spent 6 months at studying when I studied the airport operations, Orlando Airport started very small, and it's blown out now. But that's possible because they got land masses. We don't have no land masses.
We're finite.
We're just on a little island, you know.
Yeah,
so, you know.
16 square miles.
Yeah, and you know, and then we get these pathetic ideas of, oh, let's build tunnels, you know, for roads to ease the traffic. Come on. Yesterday, Saturday, somebody told me, yeah, but the tunnels are a good idea. But these are people who have never taken time out to go and drive through a tunnel in a big country.
I wouldn't drive through a tunnel.
And, and to see what it takes. So my point is this, that we permitted it to get so far. Yes, the mega yachts are coming, okay? But you know what we missed to RL? We had at a certain time indigenous, let us say, ownership and participation. Okay? I'll give one example. The biggest insurance company. Who were the original owners? All indigenous St. Martiners. Okay? 5 of them. What has happened? None of them, because we don't believe in this either. None of us, we don't believe in spending and dedicating time to educating our next generation. None of us took time and said, we're going to send 3 people to study the insurance business by force. Don't come tell me you want to be a graphic designer and you want to do this because it's popular. We have spent more money over the years sending students to study graphic designer than any other big country in the world on average. But we didn't send nobody to study, force them to go study insurance or banking. So now, what happened? We had control on certain things, but it disappeared because we were not prepared, and we did not prepare. What I'm getting to is that for too long, those who had the indigenous ones, who had the means and who got high up, all they looked at was the bottom line. The bottom line. They ain't taking none of their children and send them. I had a friend in Curacao. Oh. He's from Indian, let me put it this way. And he born in Curacao. And he told me that when he finished what they call Harvard, he was very smart, he wanted to go study biology. And his parents said him, biology, what's that? He said, no, no. They tell him you have to study business. He said, no, I'm not interested in business. He said, look here, they told him your great-grandfather came with a suitcase selling cloth in Curacao. He built up an empire of 2 stores, and you don't want to run it? So they gave him a year, tell him to study biology. He went to the Netherlands. He didn't do anything well. He didn't study well. When he came back, they brought the whole family together and they sit him down and they say, well, from now on, you failed 1 year, you didn't do well. From now on, you're going to do what we tell you. And they forced him to go to the States to study business. And he turned out very good in business and took over the family business that was there for 3 generations. But we don't do that. We let the children, and we believe this philosophy, let them study what they want to study, you know.
Yeah. It's so unfortunate because, when you look at St. Martin today, and I look back over my life, I've learned a lot about St. Martin and our people because I have 3 daughters. One is an attorney, one is a medical doctor, and the other one is a psychologist. And what I discovered as my daughters became professional women is that St. Martin don't really want professional people. They prefer to have them from somewhere else and not St. Martin. And that is unfortunate because I remember at the time when we were talking about separate status, I remember the night when Sarah Westcott Williams called me on Oral Gibbs Live. It was the year 2006. I think we're in November, somewhere there, to tell me that finally come to an agreement with the Dutch government and St. Martin will get separate status, And I remember speaking with people at the late Groeneveld about what we needed for St. Martin. And he was saying, well, we needed a lot of lawyers and all kinds of things. Well, guess what? My eldest daughter went to study in Holland, went to Leiden University, got 2 master's degrees in law from Leiden and 1 from Amsterdam University, comes back to St. Martin, and let me tell you, then reality struck it, is she's been pushed around and demonized and by her own people in her own government. You think that they'll welcome you in. You think that they'll at least give you an opportunity, because we all come back, as you said earlier, we want to change the world.
Yeah.
So no, they don't want, you can't express yourself. You're supposed to take every crap they give you and keep your mouth shut. My children are not like that. So in St. Martin, we tend to, and a former member of parliament and minister told me this, and I won't tell you in the air what it is. He says to me, today, the government of St. Martin have no confidence in its own people, and that includes also the business community.
Yeah. What can I say?
Maybe I said a mouthful, but everything I said there was the truth.
I have my opinion. I spent the period I spent as Prime Minister. I see a few things that I wanted to change, and it was extremely difficult because you have in the organization, you have some people that is, how you say, they bound in one form, and it's difficult. And you know what they used to tell me? The 11 months I spent as Prime Minister, oh, that's how they do it on Curacao. I said, no, this is how it has to be done. If you're doing something incorrect way, and you're stuck in it, and somebody comes and you're so stuck in it, oh, that's not the way, this is how we're doing it here. But the way you're doing it is not correct, because this is a problem you're going to get down the road. And we tend to believe, again, like what I said just in the beginning of the program, we tend to believe that we know everything, and we're not open to listen for improvement. And regretfully, that will not help us in developing this island.
Is Curacao the same way in terms of taking care of the people and giving them opportunity?
No, in Curacao, but Curacao is a bigger an old elder culture, and also has, Curacao is big in size, big in population, and also in human assets, they got a whole lot more. And what happened, I'll give you an example, and not to blow no horn or anything, but they still have people in Curacao that is open to seek advice and input from outsiders I've been the last 3-4 months in contact with a group, not in government but outside, on picking my brains, I call it. And in fact, next month I'm going to Curacao. We're having a meeting with them, picking my brains, for instance, to get my experience of working in the trust fund for the Maarten Trust Fund in the steering committee, and also working with the World Bank. And I didn't realize it. They tell me, they said, do you realize that you're the first person from the Netherlands Antilles that has spent 5 years going to the World Bank and, figuring out how it works.
There's a wealth of experience you gain there.
Of course. And they are tapping from it, so where that is concerned, that's a difference. Their human resources tank is much bigger than ours, and I guess it will take time for us to understand that we have to take the locals who come back, the professionals, and groom them, and maybe guide them and listen to them also while guiding them, to be able to get maximum production out of them.
See, it's a very complex world today, and too often people are resentful of young and new people coming in. They feel they're going to lose their job, and they tend to want to groom you in a way like they were groomed.
Yeah.
And they don't understand that the world has changed.
The world has changed. You cannot use the same system of grooming, the same formula of 10 years ago.
Right.
It's a whole new different world. And along the way, you have to also develop yourself to understand that there's a whole different world. I find too often there's not enough attention spent on looking on matters on let's say, outside of St. Martin. And that is important to see how developments are in other countries around the world and also in the Caribbean, to be able to learn and move forward.
All right, so
yeah.
So are you optimistic about St. Martin future?
I am always optimistic. We have to be optimistic and keep pushing, because, like I said, all the negative, I hear some voices coming out of government, and I keep telling you, the issue of more is not necessarily good.
Right.
Okay? If you got a jar, okay, and you keep forcing, whether it's pineapple or pickles or whatever in it,
right,
at a certain moment, the jar is going to break. And what you have to do is make sure that the pickles that you're putting in the jar is a high quality pickle.
So you think the government of Samara will be calling you for some advice?
I don't know. I'm busy. I'm busy every day, Aura. Look, I'm not a person who people just tell me, but when you're going to retire? I said, what's that? Retire for what? I've seen too many people my age say they're staying home, and then they becomes, like the old people used to say, they become doting. They can't follow up. And I have no intention of becoming doting by doing nothing. And I use the example from a video clip I saw the other day from Steve Harvey. Mm-hmm. He was interviewing a pastor or a bishop in a church. The guy was 90 years old.
Wow.
And his wife died 5 years before. And he married a lady now, 60 years old, 30 years younger than him. So Steve Harvey asked him, he says, so are you planning on retiring or something? He said, Steve, in my house, there is a rocking chair. He said, I pass by the rocking chair every day. He said, I look at it. He said, I touch it. He said, I rock it. But he said, I never sit in it, because I have no intention of retiring and to sit in any rocking chair. Well, the same here. I have no intention of sitting in no rocking chair.
Well, I wish you all the best. You have a gene that lived for many, many years, very long. So
thank you very much.
I know you're going to make it. And I always enjoy having you come in and speak about your experience and everything else. So hope we can always have you back sometime.
Thank you very much. I always enjoy coming here and sharing. There's a lot of pressure the pressure is mounting on me to write the memoirs. or to start recording. I've started recording some bits here and there, but there's so much to write about. You know, I've got a title already for some chapters. I called it "Tell Me About French Quarter." It's a village that I grew up in.
Right.
From the time I was 6 when we came here from Curacao, and an amazing little village. I mean, it has its ups and downs, but
It has changed so much, right?
has changed a lot. Has changed a lot, but still nice. The people are still together as much as possible. But St. Martin in general has been an amazing island, and so much to do, so much of nice things, so much of things. It has changed. You know, it's not the days anymore when Sidney Poitier would come and walk around in Phillipsburg and Harry Belafonte, Jackie Onassis, and people that you'll meet them in a restaurant in Grand Cars or whatever. They were relaxed. You know, there was no harassment, but they could drive also. Again, the issue on this island is the traffic. The traffic. If we do not get serious in the next, I would say, year or two about traffic, it's going to be a disaster.
Maybe we could do like Singapore,
What?
where you have to buy a license to get a car.
Well, something. No,
The files you have to pay.
the first thing we have to do, I think, we have to sit down with the French side. People believe this thing of, oh, we got to do it. And there's an attitude also amongst a lot of people in government, I dare say it.
Yeah.
Oh, don't worry with the French side. They are depending on us.
Big mistake.
No, big mistake. This island is complementary to each other. And that's why I've always, and my passion has always been to bring both sides closer together. In many things I've succeeded, in others I have not. But we have to come together and figure out. I was talking to the supposed to be incoming prime minister, and one of the things I told him, I said, when you sit down with the prime minister, you know where you got to go to the first place? He said, where? I said, you got to go Marigot.
Yeah.
He said, yeah. I said, you have to go Marigot. And I tell every prime minister that I know that coming in, you got to go Marigot, especially with hurricane season coming up. Because you have to coordinate a simple thing, simple thing, but means so much. Together with the French side, the prefect, because that's the level they're going to decide it, and also with the collectivity. A simple thing. You have to coordinate and stay in contact with each other when you are going to implement a curfew. Why? One prime minister asked me, why? I said, how are you going to implement a curfew? Say that from 6 o'clock you're not allowed to drive. And what are you going to tell the guy who's on the French side, or who's on the Dutch side trying to go to the French side? So these things have to be done jointly. You understand what I mean? Otherwise, you can't move forward. So many things have to be done jointly.
I agree.
And until we understand that, we will suffer the consequences
One
of it.
thing you was like always special envoy to the French side.
Well, no, I was asked. I had a 1-year contract. I worked 6 months on it, but since then, up until 3 months ago, I mean, there's still cases where authorities and people from Dutch or French side will call me. Can you check this for me, please? Can you figure that out? Oh yeah, every day, every week I should say. Every week I get some request or the other, which is nice.
Yeah, they're gonna be calling you again.
I don't mind being called as long as it's for St. Martin.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Gumbs.
Thank you.
Success. And that's it for now. See you next time on YouTube, Facebook, and on Hot 99.9 FM radio. Take care. Bye.